Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, and welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and it is a great day to talk about chiropractic and also continue through our current module, which is Module 3, the Report of Findings module. And today is week 2, which is titled Greet the Patient and Their Spouse, right? And just to frame this, because when you go in for your Report of Findings, you're meeting your patient who is a new patient from the last time they were there or from a previous visit, and you're about to deliver this Report of Findings and let them know what you found on that initial exam. Now, this is week 2, obviously, so we're moving through the sequence. In this particular sequence, we're going to greet the patient and hopefully their spouse, which I showed you before, the benefit or the ways to invite the spouse to come along. But the importance of that being the spouse is going to help the patient with things to do at home, obviously support them through the process of receiving chiropractic care, and ultimately to encourage them to continue through the care plan so that they get the best results, you get better retention, and everybody wins, right? So that's the goal as we go through this. Now, the just to kind of kick this off, because we have a lot to talk about today, but just I'm going to frame this with a question, right? Because we've all had Report of Findings where a patient said, I need to go home and think about this before I sign up for care. And we want to avoid that, obviously. We want them to get their care. We've also had patients that have dropped out of care because their spouse unknowingly said, why are you still going to the chiropractor? So there's a lot of benefits by incorporating the Report of Findings in a way that you include the spouse and incorporate their feedback and their support into taking care of your patient. So that's why we want to talk about those things. Sorry, I'm moving a couple little windows around here just so that I can see all of you better and not get other things in the way. But as always, with our topic today, if there's a question that you have or anything that I can answer for you, just raise your hand or type it in or whatever you need to do so that I get the questions answered for you. But let's move along and go through this so that, see, this is, and I apologize, I've got this window that's not moving out of the way. There we go. Okay, I figured it out. All right, so there we go. So let's continue through this and show you how this works when the spouse comes to the Report of Findings with your patient. There's one little sidebar that I want to cover too, and that is what happens when the spouse doesn't come to the Report of Findings. We'll talk about that today as well. But the bottom line is we want to go through this flow so that everybody wins. Like I said, your patient gets the best care, they get the best results, and ultimately they follow through with your recommendations. Okay, so let's dive in and talk about this. And I hope everybody had a nice long holiday weekend with Memorial Day and got to celebrate with your families and think about those that have fought so hard for the freedoms that we enjoy in our country. So it was a great day to have a remembrance of all those and to celebrate what we've all worked so hard for and what they've worked so hard for as well. Okay, so let's talk about this. So the DC and the CA greeting. So when I come in now, because we did the memorable welcome, or sorry, the Report of Findings introduction before, now I'm going to walk in and I'm going to introduce my CA. If there's a CA there, then great. If there's not, I'm just going to come in myself. But I do want to introduce myself to the spouse. Okay, and that's important. So we want to have this really critical introduction. And it's very simple. When I come in, here's the patient that I already know. Actually, let me do it this way. Here's the patient that I already know. So, hi, John, welcome back. It's great to see you. You must be Mary. It's nice to meet you. And I want to say thank you for coming today because we have some really important information that we're going to cover. And this way, John can get the best results. So that's my introduction. And it's actually done with a caring handshake, which I've shown you before. So a caring handshake. So you really get that connection with both your new patient and with the spouse. Obviously, if there's no spouse there, that's fine. We're going to still do the caring handshake, and we're still going to follow the same sort of steps in this sequence. I see quite a few CAs on the call today. That's I think even maybe more than usual, which is great, because what that tells me is that CAs, you're going to be participating in this and being able to really jump in with the report of findings. And that's an empowering experience. It's something that really is endearing for the patient to know that the staff at this chiropractic office is also endeared to their well-being and helping them. And I actually have a new CA that I'm training to deliver the report of findings right now. So her name's Anna, and she and I will be meeting later on today to do some training, which, fast forwarding, at the end of this module, we will have the next seminar coming up. I sort of glossed over that on the other page, but the next seminar is in July on the 15th, and that is a live seminar. So I encourage all of you, please come to my office. We'll have a live seminar. We will go through the details of financial arrangements. That's the topic of that. But all of this is leading up to the financial arrangements, right? The report of findings is just one piece, the financial arrangements is one piece of the whole report of findings sequence. And it'll be great to have that live seminar with all of you and really roll up our sleeves and work through how to calculate care plans on that day. So please mark that in your calendars. Plan to come to Santa Cruz. It's a great place to be in the summer. In July, you can go to the beach, you can go surfing, you can go drive along West Cliff and see the ocean and the seals, but then of course we'll have a great day of chiropractic at the same time. So anyways, just want to encourage all of you, make the trip. It'll be a lot of fun, and you'll get a lot out of it by being here. Okay, so I introduced the CA, and then from there, let me go back to sharing my screen, because from there we're gonna, well, let me actually give you kind of specifically how that introduction goes, because I started to do that with the caring handshake. But I walk in, there's my patient, there's the spouse. Hi, John, it's great to see you again. You must be Mary. It's so important that you're here. I've also asked my assistant to join me, right? Because if I'm coming in with my CA, all of a sudden there's 4 people in the room. So I needed to let the patient know, why is this other person here with the doctor? So I've asked my assistant to join me, and she'll be explaining your results and my recommendations in just a minute. It can also help to add that I've reviewed your file in detail with my assistant, because sometimes patients will be a little reserved, like, well, wait a minute, here's the doctor. Why is this receptionist here to explain my findings? But if we presuppose that they're thinking that, and then preface it by saying, my assistant is here and I have gone over your finding or your file in detail with my assistant, they're going to go ahead and explain these results for you, then they'll feel comforted and they'll feel reassured, like, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. They're an extension of the doctor, and it builds that rapport. I also want to emphasize where we left off, which was, it's a good thing we did that exam and took those x-rays, because you do have a serious condition in your spine and it's affecting your nervous system. Now, that statement right there could be a little alarming for a spouse who's sitting there if you don't follow these steps correctly, right? The spouse is sitting there going, well, wait a minute, you just left with some low back pain the other day and said you were going to go get a quick crack and be fixed, and then you'd be right back. Well, that definitely changes the context of that impression when we start off by saying, it's a good thing we took those x-rays. You do have a serious condition that's affecting your spine and your nervous system. So that is important. Okay, so now let's continue on and go into this next step, because from there, after I've done the introduction with eye contact, as it says on the screen, eye contact, a caring handshake, and then my CA is going to choose a seat. Now I'm introducing my CA, so I'm actually not going to take a seat. I'm doing this standing because I'm about to step out and go on adjusting patients. So I'll be leaving my CA in the room. Now, if I'm the one doing the report of findings, then obviously I would walk in and I would take a seat and I would sit. I want to sit knee to knee. And let me show you a picture of this, because I want to sit knee to knee in a way that my patients feel like we're up close. This is, a little more up close and personal. And we need to be, because this is a serious moment where we're going to be explaining the findings. And I want to point out, because this proper greeting is what sets the tone for the whole report of findings, right? The way you sit down, the way you carry yourself, the way that you're choosing your words, the way that you're interacting is what's setting the tone. So if you're walking in and you're happy and you're bubbly and everything's great, well, that doesn't lend itself to, I need to take this condition seriously, right? And there's a famous quote that says, people will do a lot more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure, right? They'll do a lot more, they'll put a lot more energy into, they'll put a lot more effort into avoiding pain than they will to gain pleasure. So if you want to motivate your patients to follow through with your recommendations, this is not the time to be bubbly and happy. There is times for that, which is great, because we don't want to just be sour and stern and serious all the time. But this is just not one of those times. This is a time when we left some big questions unanswered at the last visit. And if you're wondering why that was, that's so that there's still that motivation for the patient to return for the report of findings. But those unanswered questions are still hanging in the air, and we want to dive into those. And if you do have CAs that are delivering the reports of findings for you, we will dive into those, and our CAs will actually be answering those questions. So I, as the doctor introducing the CA, I can allude to them and let them know. And here's an example. When you came in last time, we did confirm that you have a serious condition affecting your nervous system. Do you remember what the name of that condition was? Now, if we did our job right, the patient will very quickly say, oh, yes, it was a subluxation. That's correct. Then I would turn to the spouse. So if you're writing notes, take notes on this. Then I'm going to turn to the spouse and say, have you ever heard that term before? I know it's an unusual term, but it's called a subluxation. Have you heard that before? And most likely the patient's spouse, the spouse is probably going to say, no, I've never heard of that. I just had a report of findings yesterday where the spouse said, yes, I know what that is. And it was great because she not, excuse me, she not only has been to a chiropractor before, excuse me, I got to drink my tea, but she's also, excuse me, a registered nurse. So she knows anatomy and she's been to a chiropractor. And yes, she's familiar with the term subluxation. So I said, perfect. And this will kind of go into the script or the flow of this. But I said, oh, that's great. You've heard of that term. You mind if I ask how you've heard that term? Because not everybody's heard of that before. And then she told me, well, I went through nursing school. I'm a registered nurse and I've been to a chiropractor before. And I thought, oh, that's great. And as it turns out, the spouse has actually had regular maintenance chiropractic care, right, that she's familiar with and she utilizes. The spouse, the husband, was a little more of a stick in the mud, and she kept telling him, you should go to a chiropractor. You're complaining about your back hurting all the time. And he was like, no, 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 no. And then finally it got so bad, so he came. Now, I'm framing that for you because you can imagine how important it was to have the spouse there to learn what his condition is, what it's going to take to correct it, what my requirements are in order to accept him as a patient. And boy, is she going to support him through that care plan now, because I'm sharing it with him. And based on her background, she knows how important it is. So these are all things that just make this whole process so dynamic and so important for people to get the best care possible. Okay, so let's dive back in. But that's what that looks like. So we're knee to knee. We're engaged with our patient. I'm actually sitting on an adjusting table in this picture, but oftentimes I don't sit down because my CA is about to deliver the report of findings. So let's continue on and go through how I begin the report of findings. And it starts out like this. We're going to talk about the subluxation details, and that's done in a Socratic way. A Socratic way, or Socratic education, means we're going to ask questions, and those questions are going to build a new understanding through the patient answering those questions, right? That new understanding is for the patient. So, and I'll show you the script on that in just a minute in terms of how that goes. So we're going to cover the subluxation details. We're also going to cover where we left off. One of those unanswered questions that we're now going to answer was, we're concerned about the subluxation. Sorry, excuse me. We're concerned about the subluxation. We're not sure how long it's been there, so we're going to do some additional tests to determine how advanced it is. So that unanswered question was, when you come back for the report of findings, then we'll have answers letting us know whether or not you have degeneration. So as you can see on the screen, now's the time to confirm whether or not that happened, right? So we're going to confirm the subluxations are there. And if applicable, of course, if there's degenerative joint disease or degeneration from the subluxations, we'll confirm that as well. We're going to remind the spouse of the chief complaint. And this is a distinction that I want to point out, because the chief complaint, as you learned in the last module, is different from the primary concerns. Now, the spouse, okay, so let me frame this for you. And this is great. I see well, some of the doctors on the call already know this. I see Dr. Gabrielson, you just jumped on. So welcome to the call, Dr. Gabrielson. It's great to have you and your team on today. But the patient may have come in with low back pain, and then through the course of understanding what's possible through chiropractic care and enhancing the function of their nervous system, they became inspired that not only could their back pain be helped by chiropractic care, but their lifelong allergies could be helped. The shift that could happen, the shift from their chief complaint, which was the low back pain, into what could become the primary concern that they have, where they actually see the allergies as a more important priority than their original chief complaint. That's what's important here. But, and this is the big but, their spouse is not aware of this, potentially, right? Their spouse saw them leaving the house saying, I'm going to go out and get an adjustment for my back pain. But what they learned, the patient learned in the consultation, was that there may be a possibility for help with the allergies. The spouse is not aware of that yet. So it's important not to incorporate those two yet. We're going to focus on the chief complaint, all right? And remind the spouse of that. Not only what it is, but how long it's been there. So they had this original chief complaint of low back pain. It's been there since 10 years, since they fell off the ladder at home. And that's what they came in for. The spouse says, oh yeah, I'm aware of that. I know what that is. They told me about that before they left the house. Then, and this goes back to that Socratic style of education, we want to obtain the spouse's impressions of chiropractic. And what that looks like is, based on John coming in with this lower back pain, we found a condition in his spine, and it's where the nerves are being pinched between the bones. And I know for all of you who are new in practice, you're fresh out of chiropractic college. Yes, that's oversimplifying it. We're putting it on the lower shelf so everyone can reach it. So there's this condition where the nerves are being pinched between the bones. Do you remember what that's called? And the patient says, yeah, it's called a subluxation. So I turn to the spouse. Have you heard of that condition before? Now, if you're like the spouse that I saw yesterday, she said, yeah, I'm familiar with that condition. Oh, that's great. Well, do you mind sharing with me, have you been to a chiropractor before? Yes, I have. Oh, and what were the results like? Were you happy with the results? How did it go? She said, yes, I've been going for years. I'm really happy with the results. And then we continue on, right? We come back to John because we've got that addressed. We've got it handled. That could potentially be an issue, though, if we don't handle it. And I'll give you the flip side of that example. When we obtain the spouse's impressions of chiropractic, what if the spouse has never been to a chiropractor and they had heard long ago that it costs way too much money to go to a chiropractor, or chiropractic adjustments hurt? Well, they're sitting there and they're thinking about that in their mind, and they're thinking, boy, it's a good thing I came with my husband today, because I've heard that chiropractic adjustments hurt and it costs a lot of money when you go. Well, if we don't address that now, and we go through the report of findings, and then we assume the patient's going to be ready to get adjusted, and we assume that the cost of the care plan is going to be affordable, and we lay out the numbers and we proceed with the adjustment, and then it hurts, what do you think is going to happen? I'm going to expand my screen for you because I want you to be able to see me up close for this. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to ask for the sale at the end of all that. You're going to say, okay, let's set you up for your care plan. And they're going to lean over and they're going to whisper in their ear, oh, let me talk to you later. I want to talk to you. I want to tell you something, right? They're going to talk quietly. And then the patient's going to sit back up and say, actually, that's great, doc, but I think we're going to go home and think about it. Now, why is that happening? It's happening because what the spouse leaned over and whispered in his ear was, I told you that it's going to cost a lot, and that's the cost. And I watched that adjustment just now. That looked really painful. And so that's exactly what I told you. It's probably going to hurt, right? So they're confirming those impressions that they had already set their mind on before coming in to see you. And that's the basis for them leaving and saying, we're going to think about it, we'll call you later. And then unfortunately, they miss out on their chiropractic care. So we don't want to have that happen. That's why, going back to our screen, we want to make sure that we address the impressions of chiropractic with the spouse. We already did it with the patient when they first came in for their first visit, but now we're going to do it again with the spouse, just so we can let them know. And I've given you a script to be able to handle all these issues that might come up, so you can go back and reference that. But I just want to explain the importance of that so that you don't miss out on getting started with their care and then all of a sudden having this surprise pop up. So let's keep going. And I'm now going to give the first push off. Okay, so as that flow is going, right, I introduced myself to the spouse. We confirmed the subluxation. We also confirmed that there's additional things going on. We got the impressions of chiropractic. And now the next part is and this is what I'm saying to the patient. So you can write this down, although I'll give you a script in a minute that you can just print out. But so John, I want to just let you know that my only hesitation in accepting you as a patient would be that you started with the care that you need, but didn't finish it. Because if you didn't finish it, what's going to happen to your condition? Is it going to get better, or is it going to go back to the way it was, or possibly even worse? And John says, well, if I don't continue with it, or if I don't follow through, it's probably going to get worse. And that's correct. That's right. My concern, or my requirement in order to accept you as a patient, is that you're able to follow through with my recommendations so that you get the best results. Can I count on you to do that? And what they're probably going to say is, yes, that's fine. Or they're going to say, well, I need to know how much it costs, what it is that you're recommending. And then I can tell you, sure, I'll follow through, right? Now, if they say that, because I'm sitting there now I'm introducing my CA to do the report of findings, but I'm about to step out. If they say that, how do you respond to that? Well, what I say is, that's a great question. Now, my assistant's actually going to go over the details of your condition. She's also going to explain to you what it's going to take as far as taking care of it, the appointments that I'm recommending for you, and she's going to go through the cost. So I don't want to take away from what she's going to go over with you, but I will tell you this. I'm committed to helping you, and I know that I can. So when she goes over that, if there's any challenges, please let her know, because if there's a challenge with the schedule or with the appointments that we're recommending, we'll do our best to work with you. If there's a challenge with the cost of the care that you need, we have other options available. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. So just let my assistant know if there's any challenges, and we'll do our best to work with you. And then when I come back in, if there's still more questions, then we'll talk some more. But let me let her go through that with you. My hunch is it'll be fine. But if there's anything else that I can cover when I come back, I'll be happy to do that. So see, I'm not, what I don't want you to do in this scenario is I don't want you to steal the thunder of your CA. I still want you to give that hat of recognition to your CA. I'm not finding the right word to say that, but I want you to give that to them, because that's going to build rapport, it's going to build authority, and it's going to build value for the patient to respect and understand and follow through with what your CA is explaining. So if there's anything that comes up as a question before you step out of the room, doctors, and you know it's something that's going to be covered in the course of the report of findings with your CA, let the patient know that. They'll be covering that in a minute. That's a great question. They'll cover it for you. And if there's more questions when I come back, I'll be happy to dive in further. And then we go from there. Okay. So that way you're maintaining that authority position for your team. All right. So after that, I give the first push off, Then I leave the room. I go to see other patients, and the CA continues with the report of findings. So it's really not a big process. It's about 5 minutes. And what's great about this is that once you have trained your team and your CAs to deliver the report of findings, you'll feel comfortable incorporating those report of findings during adjusting times, right? So if it's during adjusting times, then you can see a lot more patients, and you're maintaining efficiency, you're maintaining the volume of patients that you're serving, patients aren't left to wait, everything's going smoothly, and it really makes for a great process. So let's jump out of here and go back over to the website, and I want to show you, let's see how this is going to work in your office. So let me go back to sharing my screen. There we go. Okay, so here's our current week, right? Current materials. We've got the report of findings, module 3, greet the patient and the spouse. There's build better compliance and results when the spouse joins the report of findings. And here's our documents. We also have a video of this. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of this. This information is just a 3-minute video, 3.5-minute video. And I'll show you exactly how I go through that introduction in the report of findings. So that's there for you to view, but let's go through the outline here, which here's the steps that you want to take. And I mentioned this earlier, but in the new patient appointment, I want to make sure that you're all comfortable in using the conclude DC examination script. And it has the location here, because that's where, doctors, you as the authority are letting your patient know, I need you to bring back your spouse when you come back to review the findings. Your spouse should be with you so that I can show your spouse specifically how to help you at home and help you to get the best results. So, and it's not a false promise. As I hope you know, I'm not going to give you a false promise on that. You are going to follow through with that, but it is important in that way. So that's how we request the patient brings their spouse. Then we ensure the patient brings their spouse by following these steps here. The reception uses the new patient completion script, and then a confirmation call or text goes out. And then when the patient arrives with the spouse, we follow these steps, right? That's on there. So you can read this on your own time, but this is the part I wanted to explain. If the patient comes without the spouse, this is an important distinction here that you can use, because you don't want to drop the ball. You want to make sure that the patient gets the care that they need. But in these steps, we talk about how you approach this when the patient arrives without the spouse, even after you've followed all the steps correctly, right? So in that case, number 1, the reception CA politely asks to reschedule the appointment. Now, what does that look like? Hi, John, welcome back. I just wanted to, I know we have you scheduled with Mary today. Is Mary on her way? Oh, no, she couldn't make it. Sorry. Well, would you like to, because obviously the doctor felt it was very important for Mary to be here to help you with some of the things that we actually prepared in your file today. Can you call her? Can she come quickly? What should we do? And of course, if John says, she can't come, she couldn't make it, whatever came up. Okay, well then let's go ahead and continue. But sometimes, and I've had this happen, where the patient actually says, oh, wow, I didn't realize how important that was. Let me make a quick phone call. Let's see what I can do to get Mary to come here quickly. Okay. And it might be that 10 or 15 minutes later, there's Mary. But you see how you're holding your ground. You're holding that importance as a constant through the whole process. Now, we do have our little caveats, if you will. That's fine. We still want to get the patient adjusted. That's okay. But we're not losing sight of what our intentions were from the beginning. And we're doing it in a loving way, in a nurturing way, or a supportive way, but we're still holding our ground as far as we told them it was important. It is important. They're not here. Let's remind them that it's important, but at the same time, we're happy to continue with the care. So let me continue with that. All right. So if they can't make it, then we continue the report of findings using the outline, which I've given you. But stop before giving the doctor's recommendations or the financial arrangements, right? And this is important because we don't want to run into a situation where we go through the cost and then they go home and they say, hey, guess what? Here's how much it costs. I had a great adjustment today and it's going to be, $400 a month, or it's going to be $4,000 for my care plan. And the spouse goes, what? I thought you just went in there for a quick adjustment. Like, where did that come from, right? There's a disconnect there. So the way to approach that is to still do the report of findings, and then right before you get into financial arrangements, then you can remind the patient, see that based on what you understand about how advanced your condition is, this is why we asked your spouse to be here. Let's go ahead and get you adjusted. Let's reschedule for a time when your spouse can come, and then we can lay out the exercises to do at home. You're going to get better faster. We'll go over customizing everything, and away we go. Okay. So it's just a nice 2-step way. Still, you're maintaining the importance. You're able to provide chiropractic care. They understand the importance, and away you go. Now, there is one important piece to this, well, there's lots of important pieces to this, but there's one more piece to this, and that is when you have a team that's fully trained. And that's why I wanted to acknowledge all the CAs. I see a lot of CAs on our call today. So welcome CAs. I see Emily and Celeste. And so welcome. And I applaud your commitment to chiropractic and helping our patients, all of our patients, to get better. So when you have CAs that are trained to do the report of findings, when this person's going to come back for basically a second report of findings and the spouse needs to come with them, you'll have the luxury of scheduling these report of findings even during adjusting times, or you'll have the luxury of scheduling these report of findings at a time that's maybe more convenient for the spouse to come. And when you have a fully trained team, you have the flexibility to move those appointments around. So that's a good, important piece of that helps us to serve more patients. Okay, so then we're going to, right here, we'll explain that the spouse is asked to attend so the doctor can explain the exercises which can speed recovery and possibly reduce costs. Ask the patient if they're willing to reschedule the appointment for a time when their spouse can join them. With their new understanding about the importance of correcting the subluxations and seeing the severity, because they're actually going to see it now. They're going to see what's going on. Many patients will opt to reschedule and bring their spouse. If not, continue with the ROF through completion. So if they're holding firm, my spouse can't make it, I'm here, I want to get started with my care, okay, that's fine. But we can at least offer that as an option to reschedule for their spouse. If the patient chooses to reschedule, it might be necessary to provide one or more pre-ROF visits until the spouse can come. So those are the visits where you're adjusting them, but you haven't had a report of findings yet. And this will happen fairly often. It also helps if all CAs are cross-trained to deliver a report of findings to offer times that work for the spouse. I mentioned that, i.e. during adjusting times using a new patient appointment spot. So we have that flexibility when our team is trained. Let's jump over to here and I want to go through this script with you as our final point. Hi, John, it's good to see you. Now, this is the doctor, right? I walk in, there's John and Mary, and I walk in with my CA. It's good to see you. Mary, thank you for coming. At John's last visit, he shared that he had low back pain for 2 years after a fall at home. Are you aware of this? Yes, I've known about his pain. I was there when he fell. John, it's a good thing we did your exam as we found the most likely cause of your symptoms. There are misaligned vertebrae in your spine affecting your nervous system, and I'm concerned about their severity. Do you remember the name of the condition we found at your first visit? Yes, it's called a subluxation. That's correct, and it's causing many of your health problems. We also gave you information to read at home. Do you remember the name of the secondary condition? And again, if you're following the steps that I've shown you, this is really going to help with your retention, because at the end of the new patient appointment, we gave the patient a pre-printed page explaining not only the subluxations, but also the degeneration that happens from an uncorrected subluxation. So they had that to take home. Hopefully they read it. If they did, then obviously they're going to let you know that, or they're going to not only let you know that, but they're going to know the answer to that question, which is right here. Yes, I read it. It's called spinal degeneration, and it's caused by uncorrected subluxations. That's right. Unfortunately, we've also found evidence of this condition in your spine. Oh, I was afraid you'd say that. Mary, have you ever been to a chiropractor or heard of a spinal subluxation? No, I haven't. And this is where footnote number 3 down here asks for the spouse's impressions of chiropractic. Right? So that's important. This is where we want to cover that in detail. So once we've done that, okay, John, these new findings have me concerned. Now, what are new findings? These are the findings where we confirmed that they have a subluxation, but then based on our additional testing, we determined how long, roughly or approximately, they've had that subluxation, or what resulting damage has built up from the subluxation. So we have more information now to share that we didn't have on their first visit when we left off before. So we want to go into that. Okay, so that these new findings have me concerned. In order for me to accept you as a patient, it's only by knowing that you're committed to following my complete recommendations. If not, that's okay, but I would not be able to accept you as a patient knowing that your condition would continue to get worse. So this statement is called the push-off, and it adds an extra level of commitment from the patient. This will increase retention and lead to better overall results. The patient says, that makes sense. I'm committed to doing what it takes to get this fixed right away. Well, we're doing our best to help you. We're going to do our best to help you. First, my assistant will explain the details, and I'll return shortly to answer any questions and hopefully get started. In the meantime, you'll be in good hands with my assistant. Okay, thank you. Doctor leaves the room to serve other patients. CA continues with the ROF. So that is those are the materials that you'll want to use when you're training for this, and essentially practice this. Work with your team and role play it, get them comfortable, because I can assure you, your patients aren't always going to follow the script. We hope they would, but they don't. So we have to be able to customize this. But the best way to customize it is to first of all be comfortable with the points and the high points that you want to make, right? That's how we get comfortable. Aside from that, we'll just continue on with these weekly webinars. I appreciate you being part of it and part of DC trainings. It's my goal. Somebody asked me the other day, I was at a seminar. I was actually at Palmer West for a gathering, because unfortunately Palmer West campus is going to be closing down in 2025. The cost of living has gotten to be a big barrier to entry for many students living in the Bay Area or coming to the Bay Area to go to school. So it's very unfortunate and sad that the campus is closing down. But they had a meeting with the president, and I was there, and just the vision and the just the amazing camaraderie that we have as a profession is so powerful. And we've helped so many people well over 100 years now, that it's just really great to be part of it. And so that's the point I wanted to leave with you today. And thank you again. I will see you next week. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please email me, dctrainings@gmail.com. And I don't see any hands up, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.